cherished for you guys who don't know. When Mr. Tim asked me to say a few words about you, Mr. Dan, I thought it would be easy, considering I have known you for 10 years, and I've spent a lot of time with you. But as I started writing some notes down, I realized that it's not that easy to effectively use words to describe what an incredible person that you are, and the impact that you've had on my life, and obviously everybody else too. One might not look at Mr. Dan and think that one of his best skills would be dealing with hormonal female teenage hoes who can't get their jaw ball to bite at the right time. But I really let you know he is an expert at that. I think Mr. Dan should have charged my parents double because during pitching lessons, he wasn't only being my pitching coach, he was my therapist as well. In the minds of these young girls, there is so much more going on than meets the eye. You are growing physically, you are dealing with boyfriends and parents, and how am I going to get to practice? And Mr. Dan, wow, I'm like shaking. I'm not, sorry Mr. Dan, I love you very much. Mr. Dan always takes the time to say, how are you? And more importantly, he stays to listen for the answer. While you're in Mr. Dan's presence, he will give you his undivided attention and his utmost respect. Mr. Dan encourages exercise. Take care of your body. Train hard. Be the best. When I think of Mr. Dan, I think of high fives and great hugs. Mr. Dan is a stand-up guy. He's a gentleman. His smile is contagious, and I feel protected when I'm with him. We can all learn a thing from Mr. Dan. Through his actions, he allows girls to realize their full potential and their value. I also took pitching lessons from Mr. Dan in the Dungeon, back before his facility in Churchville, and those were great times that I'll always cherish. Sorry, I had to use my name. I used to have a wild pitch every now and again, and I would clock his washing machine in his house, sorry, Miss Annette, and Mr. Dan never got mad, and in fact, he laughed. Sorry again. And my point of that is that his positive attitude changes your entire experience of softball. The only time I remember Mr. Dan getting mad is if our heads weren't in the game. And he did demand appropriate behavior and focus at all times. And to have someone like you in my life growing up was a blessing. And I know I can speak for all my sisters when I say that. Many years later, when I was in college and after several years away from pitching, I somehow found myself on the mound again. I don't know how. And I didn't know what to expect. But really what I had to rely on was just your voice and the things that you've taught me in your house, late at night, on weekends, thinking to myself over and over again, because, well, I was my own coach, you know. So thanks to you, I was able to actually pitch some games. So thank you, Mr. Dan, for everything that you have done for us, and thank you.
A reading to you as well here on this one, even though I don't have my glasses, I can see. Obviously, you've heard, what Dan has meant, to the program. Whether it was as a coach on the field, as a personal coach to individual kids, whether as a fundraiser, whether as a confidant. Dan and I have, experienced, probably the last 7 years at lunch. I don't text many people, but I do text sure back to Dan every day when he tells me where we're going to lunch. So, all those discussions, obviously, great friendship was built during those discussions. But I can tell you 90% of those discussions were about, the kids in this program, what we could do, to provide, more for the kids. I mean, if you think back, we were sitting in the warehouse the other night and just kind of thinking back to everything that, that we had done as a program. And obviously, a big part of that is having, someone there by your side that's, pushing things along. But, how many people have a 5,000 square foot facility to practice in, to make the kids better? If I had that, growing up as a kid, I probably would have actually been a good player. So, it's just a great, a great guy, somebody who has just meant so much to the program. Here's your plaque. Here's your pat on the back. But, guess what? A pat on the back, obviously, just wouldn't be enough. So, there's two things that, we wanted to give you, somewhat to memorialize this night and hopefully remember, the impact that the lightning's had. And Leslie has gift number one. Okay, as the girls came in tonight, they basically signed, don't break it, they basically signed, there's some really bad pictures of a really goofy looking guy at the bottom, but in the center, what we want to do right now is to get all the girls together with Mr. Dan and take a photo. So there's, comments and notes and sayings on there for Mr. Dan to enjoy. And then once we get finished with this quick picture, while we have everybody up, we'll then, bring in the next gift. So if you would be so kind, I think we can maybe go over there, girls, if you would, Mr. Dan.
We're outside. I know it's cold. All right, real quick. We had a second gift for Dan, and one of the things that we basically did is we talked to everybody and we said, people came to me and they were like, hey, let's do something nice for Mr. Dan. And I had a little lunch date with Dan the other day, and I said, hey, if you could do anything you wanted to do, what would you do? And Dan said, oh, I'd like to go to a UFC fight in Vegas. And I was like, oh, wow, that'd be cool. Dan, guess what? We're not going to Vegas. What I wanted to do was to be able to give you something that every day would remind you.
He collapsed.
Oh, there it is. Oh, my God. As Allison goes back inside.